Judge Walker ruled, and I quote him, AT&T cannot seriously contend that a reasonable entity in its position could have believed that the alleged domestic dragnet was legal, end of quote. But the arguments of the president's allies sink even lower. Listen to the words of the House Republican leader on Fox News. They're shameful in my view. He said, I believe that they deserve immunity from lawsuits out there from typical trial lawyers trying to find a way to get into the pockets of the American companies, end of quote. Cindy Cohn.
Time has expired.
That's for one additional minute.
Without objection.
Cindy Cohn is one of those lawyers, Mr. President. She's the lead counsel at Electronic Frontier Foundation, a small public interest law firm bringing suit against the telecom corporations. And when she heard the Fox News claim about typical greedy trial lawyers, she laughed. She said if he still thinks there were rich plaintiffs, attorneys, after he's visited our little tiny Mission Street offices, then I have a bridge to sell him. Most of the EFF lawyers worked in these big fancy law firms for big fancy salaries and took big pay cuts to join us. Long lawyers come and say, I really want to work at EFF, and you have a great bunch of lawyers here. Consider the hundreds of lawyers retained by the corporations, Mr. President, in question, and their multi-million-dollar legal budgets, and the attempt to portray them as pitiable Davids is ludicrous. Sprint lawyers recently settled an unrelated class action lawsuit for $30 million. 3 years ago, AT&T handled a settlement with shareholders for $100 million. Mr. President, I don't presume to know how the fight will end. I don't presume to hand out innocence or guilt. That's not my job, obviously. Judges and juries do that. And in their search for the truth, the only job of this body is to get out of the way. I'm not interested in one verdict or another, only that a verdict is reached. I don't care who the truth favors, only that it comes out at all. State secrets, future corporations, economic harms, reputational damage, legal burdens, as we've seen, not a single one of the president's arguments for his immunity standards. Nothing tells us to halt the legal process, to bar the courthouse door. Everything tells us to open it. Mr. President, perhaps when I leave the floor today, someone will ask me why you're so agitated about some telephone records. There's so much else to be worked up about. And I'll only be able to respond to say exactly. We've seen this administration chip away at the rule of law a dozen points. It's relentlessness may be its greatest strength. The assault becomes numbing, and our healthy outrage grows dull. It was an outrage when the president set up secret courts outside the law. It was an outrage when he ignored the courts and tapped the phones. It was an outrage when he sanctioned torture. But outrage upon outrage upon outrage, and we wind up in a stupor. We've allowed each abuse with nothing more than a promise to resist the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I'm here in the end because the line has to be drawn somewhere. Why not here, and why not today? Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to reject the motion on cloture here. Let them go back, strip this language out on immunity, give us a clean FISA bill. That's the only right thing to do. The law is here to protect all of us. We can have security and liberty. Benjamin Franklin 200 years ago said that those who would sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither security nor liberty. And so I urge my colleagues to reject cloture, and then, of course, if we can, to send this bill forward without that immunity provision.